Today I offer you a small collection of thoughts. A collection of thoughts unworthy of singular videos, but worthy of mention nonetheless. Thought 1. Masculinity and true strength. Many a conservative would have you believe that men must not cry. If one thing defines masculinity, it is strength. Where is the strength in cowering at the thought of one's own emotions? Where is the strength in utter cowardice over the prospect of displaying a harmless emotion? Where is the strength in immense discomfort and great insecurity concerning such emotions? Thought 2. On debate. People who are right win debates. People who are wrong lose debates. People who are wrong win debates. People who are right lose debates. Debates are a battle of rhetoric first, and a battle of ideas second. One would be wise to remember that. That debate has immense value, only a fool would deny it, yet it is equally foolish to downplay or deny the centrality of rhetoric in this most adored contest. Thought 3. Utopia. People love to proclaim that opposing ideas are utopian. This term is born out of Thomas More's Utopia, a text in which More describes a non-existent idealistic society. Supposedly, utopian ideas will never work in real life. Yet Thomas More's utopian ideas included divorce, euthanasia, and religious tolerance. A once inconceivable utopian idea can become a reality. This is demonstrated by the etymology of the word utopian itself. Ideas are utopian until they are not. Utopian is used as an insult, yet the very term is born out of a historical envisioning of radical ideas, many of which are now less a utopian radicalism and more a concrete reality. Thought 4. Drama and gender. Some people seem to regard women as the dramaous gender. Anyone who believes such nonsense has spent far too little time in the company of men. Few things incite drama quite as effectively as the anger, insecurity, and desire for confrontation and dominance that is born out of toxic masculinity. Thought 5. Perversions of toxic masculinity. Some people have perverted and contorted the concept of toxic masculinity into one simple statement, namely, men are bad. To call these people feminists would be far too generous, for they are a caricature of such noble pursuits. In many ways they are themselves antithetical to it. Their constant essentialism, their mindless obsession with reinforcing social differences, their complete rejection of the nuanced social understandings that have been the beating heart of feminism for so long. The idea of toxic masculinity is not anti-man. No idea is more pro-man than the idea of toxic masculinity, for it is a guide to identifying and from there solving serious social and cultural issues which cause men immense suffering. Thought 6. Punching Nazis and moral equivalency. Some people claim that punching Nazis makes you no better than them. Ah yes, because the problem with Nazis is that they punch evil people. Thanks for informing us that genociding minorities and punching an evil person are things that you regard as moral equivalents. What reductive idiocy. The only true commonality is the use of political violence. And even a sprinkling of nuance leads one to immediately conclude that acts of political violence can be placed along a very, very broad moral spectrum. Thought 7. Good ideas as tools of evil. Some people like to suggest that gay people are bad because LGBT rights have been used as an excuse for bad things such as imperialism. Human rights have been used as an excuse for bad things such as imperialism. Does this render all people evil? I think not. Any good idea, from liberty to democracy, can be contorted and perverted into a dishonest justification of a bad thing. There is not one idea that is immune to dishonest weaponization by the immoral. Every good idea is an excuse for evil in the waiting. This does not change the fact that it is a good idea. Thought 8. Supporting and legitimacy. In modern times, a distinction is of increased relevance. The distinction between supporting a leader and regarding their leadership as legitimate. Many have lost the capacity to regard a leader that they do not support as legitimate. As soon as a leader lacks one's support, they also cease to be legitimate. The legitimacy of an institution and process is determined by how much one likes the individuals it elevates. This is the attitude of many. Few ideas are as dangerous to democracy as this one. This notion is, however, simultaneously the best friend and the worst enemy of democracy. Thought 9. 2 definitions of absurd. What is absurd? The ridiculous and the stupid is absurd. The self-contradictory is absurd. Definition 1 is common. Definition 2 is of a more philosophic domain. Thought 10. The caged birds. The often vague and incoherent things which we call masculinity and femininity will not die with gender. Quite the opposite. They will be given new life. They will be freed from the cages that are gender. They will lose their chains. For gender represents nothing but an oppressive restraint on such expressions and identities. The enemy of creative and unique individual expression of the freest, truest, and healthiest variety. In the wake of the death of gender, femininity and masculinity will not follow. They will fly free and unhindered as the beautiful birds that they are. Thought 11. Just talk. Just talk. This is the suggestion of many, and they proclaim these 2 words as if they are somehow insightful. They represent one thing and one thing only: utter ignorance regarding what decades of social conditioning does to a person. If only one could instantly cancel out a lifetime of societal influence with a mere thought. Have agency we may, but what a tragedy it is that our agency is often of such little power in the face of such cultural behemoths. Try to exercise our mind against such societal forces we should, but only a fool expects victory to come with speed and ease. Thought 12. Gender is defined by difference. Gender is defined by difference. Gender is defined by unequal social standards. Gender is defined by inequality. Gender and inequality are inseparable. There can be no gender equality without gender abolition. Thought 13. Theories of international relations. An entourage of different theories, each one as brilliantly insightful and hideously reductive as the last. Every theory offers countless useful insights, endless interesting ideas, 100 fascinating thoughts. And every theory is guilty of missing this, overlooking that, overemphasizing this. An obsession with a few details, an utter aversion to nuance. Very rarely is one wholly correct or wholly incorrect. Each one points at some truths and misses others. When engaging with such things, one must wield immense nuance and a thoughtful, well-considered mind. For very rarely are complex theories entirely right or entirely wrong. Thought 14. Firing in one direction. It is a very bad sign when one only fires in one direction. When one only fires criticism at those widely regarded as being on the political left. When one only fires criticism at those widely regarded as being on the political right. At best, this is indicative of an incredibly simplistic, tribalistic conception of politics, which regards it as little more than a mindless propagandistic team sport. At worst, this is indicative of pure grifting. This is always indicative of a lack of serious values. Any person with serious values will on occasion criticize people on their own political side. When one frequently comments on politics without doing this, it is normally safe to assume that they probably have no serious values. Thought 15. Moral equality. The logical conclusion of so many attitudes towards morality is utter moral equality. This is to say no claims to superiority or inferiority among moral systems and moral claims. Moral equality means that being pro-genocide and anti-genocide are equal positions, akin to preferred flavours of cake, just personal preferences with no claim to superiority over one another. But what a falsity this is. Rationality, usefulness, desirability. There are tools with which moral systems and moral claims can be and should be judged. Moral systems are many things, but they are not beyond measurement. We have the tools required for such a job. We have the capacity for thoughtful, nuanced considerations of rationality, usefulness, and desirability. Let us consider. Thought 16. Good and evil. Why should people care about good and evil? Any moral system which does not put self-interest at its core will promptly crumble when confronted with this question. If moral philosophy has one goal, it is to create a moral system that can survive that question, and perhaps not just survive, but construct itself on it. Thought 17. Inconsistent analysis of men. I do find it most curious that some people want to simultaneously portray men as two very incompatible things. People who face no societal problems on the basis of their gender, and walking collections of mental health issues, most of which are in some way born out of toxic masculinity. Is there not an inconsistency here? Thought 18. Yes and no. Why is it that one is often not expected to have any reason to say yes, yet a good reason to say no? To say yes requires no justification. To say no requires not just a justification, but very often a good one. Is this not a troubling cultural disposition? A million dangers lurk behind a cultural necessity for justification, which regulates refusal. Thought 19. Arbitrary versus pointless. Arbitrary and pointless are not the same thing. The conflation of these two words is an utter idiocy. Sometimes an arbitrary line is an unavoidable necessity, and an incredibly useful one. One need only look at various rules and laws to conclude without a doubt that it is. Many immensely useful rules and laws are founded on the drawing of an arbitrary line. Thought 20. Mass belief equals validity. Some people seem to think that people believing something indicates it has some worth. They suggest that merely being followed is enough to give an idea value. People think it is true, so it must be. People think it has validity, so it must have validity. It has value because people think it has value. What a pathetic circular logic this is. The belief is justified by the belief. Loyalty is justified by loyalty. Support is justified by support. This is circular reasoning embodied. That concludes this collection of thoughts. I hope you found some of them to be of some value.